I am still disappointed that no one explained this to me when I landed in Australia 19 years ago. Why some of the seemingly mediocre performers breezed into leadership roles, while some of the hardest working professionals toiled in obscurity. Hi, my name is Phil Zongo. I'm the CEO of the Cyber Leadership Institute, and this is my story. I landed in this beautiful country in the spring of 2007 to build a new life. I was full of hope and expectation. I was joining one of the largest consulting firms in the world as a senior consultant, and I was ready to fly. Then reality quickly hit home. I had no idea that I would spend the first 7 years of my life in Australia stuck in the corridors of mediocrity. On paper, I was doing everything right. I was technically sharper than most of my peers. I did as I was told. I could audit Linux servers, Oracle databases, and core banking applications in my sleep. And I banked countless hours and became an indispensable asset to my audit teams. I, however, lacked the self awareness to acknowledge that the technical skills that made me a superstar in Zimbabwe carried very little weight in my new environment. I soon realized that a strong personal brand, the aptitude to communicate with clarity and persuasion, and the ability to influence critical decision makers were way better predictors of success as compared to mere technical excellence. Unfortunately, I buried my head in the sand like an ostrich, and I paid dearly. I sank in shame as the juniors I trained coming out of university accelerated past my stagnant self into managerial positions. Compounding my distress, I also surrounded myself with friends who constantly saw glass ceilings. We talked about entrenched biases and disadvantages that we had no power whatsoever to change. However, those obstacles also forced me to reconfigure my mindset. As the African proverb goes, when there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. I had a choice to sink in self pity or to take decisive action. Things started to change at the beginning of 2014 when I finally acknowledged that I was the architect of my own misery. Australia was my new reality, and I had the power within to shape my own career trajectory. And that was a profoundly empowering revelation. I stopped casting blame on other people and circumstances and started taking extreme ownership of my development goals. I took 3 decisive steps that changed my career forever. Number one, I became highly intentional about sharpening my personal brand, anchored on compelling thought leadership and rock solid skills. Secondly, I started rejecting BAU work and pushed myself into high visibility projects, those that were tied to corporate KPIs and the visibility of critical decision makers. Number three, I forced myself to figure out what it meant to build strategic relationships with decision makers and to build leadership skills that were never taught in university. I had no idea that a journey that started with studying 8 business books at the beginning of 2014 would transform my career forever. Within a few years, I published 3 best-selling books, keynoted major conferences around the world, and helped co-found the Cyber Leadership Institute, as well as coached dozens other fellow cybersecurity professionals on how to sharpen their personal brands and accelerate into leadership positions. But if there is one lesson that I learned throughout this journey, it is this. The biggest obstacles that we face are rarely external. More often than not, they are the stories that we tell ourselves, the excuses we cling to, and the limitations that we choose to accept. If my story resonates with you, I'd love to connect and help you break out of the technical ceiling and accelerate your career trajectory as well.